You're listening to Fat Hat Radio with your host, the Boomer.
On Veterans Day 2016, I had the pleasure of sitting down and talking with Sam Augustine, the author of the book, They Went in Harm's Way. Sam is a retired naval officer with 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. Sam sat down and shared some of his motivation for writing the book, some of the characters in his book, and shared some of his thoughts on American life in the 21st century, especially in how it relates to world issues and the military today. First of all, Sam, welcome to Fat Hat Radio.
Thank you, Mike.
Before we get started, I want to make sure that I thank you for myself, for Fat Hat Radio, our crew, and all the friends of Fat Hat Radio we have out there for your service to our country.
I thank you, and I thank you for everybody.
We have a series of short stories. What could I call this, Sam?
That'd be good.
Okay. They Went in Harm's Way. I read it. I loved it. It was a real easy read. It's a series of stories of veterans who have fought in the different wars.
Well, they fought in different wars. The reason I use these veterans that are in the book, there's 11 of them. I knew each one personally. I was intimate with most of them. We had many events together or spent our time together. That includes the very first piece on Doc Riley and Bruce Archer, probably one of the most decorated and best known POWs of Vietnam. We were roommates for 16 weeks as we both went through training to become officers. Bruce was a Marine and I was a naval officer, so the two of us got together. He'd clean my boots and I'd shoot rifles for him. No, I'm kidding. But we had a great time together.
Well, I thought it was kind of, I thought I'd give our listeners some background on you because you're a local Philly boy, basically. St. Raymond's Elementary School, Colonel Doherty High School, LaSalle College, and Kratz Graduate School of Business at the University of Pittsburgh, I found.
That's correct.
Now, being the modest man you are, I had to look all that up myself, but some of it I found in the book and some of it I found on your website.
Okay.
Now, I can tell you a little interesting sidebar story. Coins Kelly, one of the stars of Fat Hat Radio, was a Marine, or is a Marine. I gotta be careful how I phrase that, right?
No.
No? Okay, not with you? Good.
Not with me. You can always tell a Marine, Mike, when you're in a parking lot, they've got to tell you they were a Marine, so you'll see a sticker that says United States Marine Corps.
Good point. Well, I'm going to check that out with Coins. He's a pretty modest guy, too. But ironically enough, he went to Colonel Doherty High School, which we all know is no longer there, and he also attended LaSalle College. So what are the chances?
Well, it's pretty good. If he went to Doherty, and LaSalle was sort of the next step.
Oh, okay. All right. That's something I haven't heard either. Now, you're military. You're a U.S. naval officer.
That's correct.
Okay. Served 2 tours of duty in Nam.
That's correct.
Blue and Gold officer for the Naval Academy.
I recruited athletes and scholars for the United States Naval Academy in Bucks County.
So there's no reason I need to ask you who you're rooting for in next month's Army-Navy game?
No reason.
Okay. 1969, you started in life insurance sales after the service.
That's correct.
Formed Augustine Financial Group, Inc., an investment advisor.
Mm-hmm.
And your daughters are carrying on today?
Yes, I have 9 children, and some of them needed jobs, so 2 of them took over this practice from me.
That's excellent. Well, that's a good legacy.
There was something in there. You mentioned St. Raymond's. There was, when I joined the military, it was an interesting story there. First day I reported to boot camp, which really wasn't boot camp, it was OCS. There was a Marine DI waiting for us as we got off the bus. Really nice. We all got inside and suddenly we were braced against the wall with him screaming at us. Came up to me, he seemed to know about me, and he called me the Italian, went after me, and I suddenly broke out laughing. He demanded to know why I was laughing, and I said, sir, which is a mistake. You never call a DI sir. They're non-commissioned officers and they hate that word. So I said, sir, you're not nearly as tough as the nuns I had in 8th grade. Mike,
that's a good joke.
It wasn't a joke to him. The next 2 weeks were like hell as he made sure I was singled out for almost everything. I just wanted to share that with you.
All right, so you became the example. Yeah. And before we go off the personal, I've got to give props to your wife, Jerry, of 49 years.
That's correct.
And you already mentioned the 9 children. And is the 19 grandchildren the current count? Or
no,
is that
you're reading something old. It's 20, and we're looking forward to more.
20 and counting. Okay.
I don't know their names.
You
But
can't
we-
name
no,
all 19.
No, no.
God bless you.
Yeah, right.
All right.
No, I can't.
All right, yeah, we won't let that get out. That's our first edit. So let's talk about the book a little bit, because I really enjoyed the book. You mentioned a little bit, you mentioned Doc and Bruce,
Yes, I
which
did.
are two major characters, and
Well, Tommy Riley and I worked together at the A&P, and we became close friends where we spent a lot of free time together. He was dedicated to going into the Navy. His father had been in the Navy, and he wanted to follow that tradition. For me, it was more a matter of the movies on TV. I knew I wanted to go in the military and serve. But I remember watching Flying Tigers with John Wayne and In Harm's Way with John Wayne. And In Harm's Way influenced me tremendously. It carried on. In fact, my first duty in Vietnam was serving with that ship and many of the officers who were in the film. So it was a rather interesting event for me. But I would say the media had a lot, the acting media had a lot to do with me becoming a naval officer.
well, one of my biggest smiles in the book was in the very first chapter when you mentioned when you were younger, and was it Sky King?
Sky King.
Not everybody will remember Sky King, that's for sure.
He flew
An
two
influence.
airplanes I loved, a Cessna 310, which is a very fast six-seater, and a Beechcraft, an early Beechcraft executive plane. I like both those planes to this day.
Well, I don't want to give too much of the book away. There's 11 chapters in it. 10 of them are covering 11 men. And the one chapter, and this might be, I know this is probably a little tough, and certainly your wife is a Gold Star daughter.
She's a Gold Star daughter and a Gold Star sister.
Well, one of the stories that really affected me, I would say, as I read it, was you wrote about the only father and son who both died in combat, killed in action in Vietnam as pilots, 2.5 years apart. The most interesting thing probably about that is that these men were your father-in-law and your brother-in-law.
I knew both well.
Right. So that,
It was probably a determining factor in the rest of my life, and changed my mind on a lot of things go on in this country. My father-in-law flew in World War II, flew in Korea, was killed in Nam. In Vietnam, he had about 900 hours of combat flight time. So when we got the letters from the Secretary of the Navy, we received two. One of them honored him for all the combat hours. I checked with DoD, Department of Defense, and it's believed by many, although it can't be confirmed, that he may hold the record for most combat hours ever flown. My brother-in-law Leo, I met him when he was 17, or 16 actually, and when he turned 19 and graduated high school, he did get married pretty quick to his high school sweetheart, and they seemed to be totally in love to me, and I believe they were. Leo, though, had this feeling throughout his last 2 years in school that he wanted to go overseas and go get the enemy that killed his father. However, that attitude changed as he went through military training, and the night before he left, he and I were having a walk. He flew back here to Philadelphia to see his sister, but he and I had a long walk, and we chatted about that. And his attitude had changed to the point where all he wanted to do was go overseas, do his job, and come home. That was his whole impression. That's what he wanted to attain. And it was 2.5 months, 3 months later when he was shot down and killed while on a scouting mission for the Army. A helicopter pilot would scout, meaning that they would look for enemy positions. They would immediately drop smoke on that position. And B-52 bombers overhead, flying usually around 30,000 feet, would then drop their bombs on that target. That was the goal of every scouting mission, but scouting was probably almost a suicide mission in my mind. So,
yeah. Okay, you were mentioning about Leo Hester
Mhm.
Jr.
yes.
and as a helicopter pilot and scout, 19 years old.
19, he was 2 weeks shy of his 20th birthday when he was killed. And I often think about that when I look at young people today. Most of us in Vietnam are pretty young. And I look at the young people today and wonder who there, number one, would have the character that the people in my generation had. I really see a lack of that. And I look at them for value, and I don't see it. And this scares me because it's a reflection of our culture and our leadership in the United States today. But it is something that bothers me and disturbs me, and I try and talk about values every time I address any group of people.
Well, that kind of is what your 11th chapter in the book is about, that you titled It Matters.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the reasons I wrote this book, because I have 3 other on the shelf ready to go that are outlined, and one I hope is ready by January. But the reason this book came out first was because of the events in this country. And I felt like veterans are not paid attention to. In fact, one of the cliches out there is that people will always say, I don't want to ask a veteran about his service because we know they don't want to talk about it. That's wrong. That's so wrong. On Monday night, this past Monday, I addressed a combined meeting of the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign War in media. And at every table, it was a dinner meeting, and at every table, as I listened to them talking, they were discussing the events in their life, whether it was in the military, whether it was boot camp, whether it was in combat, whether it was doing some honors or providing honors for those who have fallen. They were talking about their days in the military. The reason people have that feeling that vets don't want to talk about it is when somebody asks us a question, how was it there? No matter what we say in the first minute, the person who asked the question is turned off, meaning that they really didn't mean to ask a question. They just weren't interested in the answer. So we feel that, like any other human being would, that there was disinterest and the question was merely mandatory. So we don't talk about it. What I did Monday night, and I've done it yesterday as well, when talking with vets, I've told them now, I'm a Catholic. At the end of every Mass, the priest says, go forth and spread the word. I said, it's time you guys did that. But I think you don't want to talk about combat. I think you would much prefer to talk about all those good times you had in the military. Share those moments because people don't understand it. In the book, I mentioned Bill Milkvey. Bill was the consensus All-American from Temple University, holds a scoring record to this day, 73 points in one game, played professional ball with Philadelphia, NBA, way back, of course. But Bill was in here, he's a client of my daughter's, and we were speaking, and he said to me, he said, you know, Sam, the 6 best years of my life. Now think about this. This is the guy that became a friend of Wilt Chamberlain and others, Guy Rogers. He knew them all, knew them well. Sits on the sidelines for Temple University basketball games, and he says to me, the 6 best years of my life were the 6 years I spent in the Army. And that made me think of Ted Williams, who's the greatest hitter that many would contend ever in baseball. At the end of World War II, flew fighters for the United States Marine Corps. Went back to play ball, was called back in to the Marine Corps for Korea before he went back to play ball again. But Ted Williams was quoted in front of his airplane with a group of Marines around him. The best team I ever played with in my life, the United States Marine Corps. And I hate giving the Marine Corps credit here, but in this particular instance, he was absolutely right. Bill was right. Ted Williams is right. So the military does have a union, a comradeship of people who served. And it's interesting to me, no matter what branch, although I will cut up the other services when we're together, not behind their backs. I totally enjoy whenever I'm talking to another veteran. I really do. It's something I feel we enjoy. I love it when they come at me. Oh, I totally love it. And I don't think I've had maybe 2 people ever not want to tell me about their service, which, by the way, makes me wonder where they served if they did. So it's always interesting to me talking to people that were in the military. And I enjoy that. With all the people out there, that these people are real people. And they see them today. One's a store clerk, one's the CEO of a publicly traded company. They're doing everything out there, from being a dentist or a doctor to being even a nurse or a school bus driver today. But they're out there, and all people have to do when they know somebody served in the military is, number 1, thank them, which we are getting, by the way. But number 2, ask them something about the military, just if it's nothing more than, tell me, did you enjoy boot camp? You know, let the guy talk for a minute about that. If you really want to thank him, ask him about something he did to serve you and put his life on the line for you just by putting on the uniform. So if a man never served in Vietnam or Korea or Afghanistan, for instance, but he wore the uniform, to me that man is a hero. That man and or woman is a hero. In the book, I talk about Bruce Archer, that POW that is held in high regard even by the POW Association, or a higher regard. I can't remember the quote exactly at this moment. It's in the book. But he was on national television, and they asked him his reaction to what was going on here in the United States. And he reflected on how disappointed he was, because here he and his friends were willing to give up their lives for others, and the anger was directed at us, those who served. That was from the heart. That's the way Bruce was. It's a shame. Anger was directed at the vets in Vietnam. It was a war that was obviously politically motivated. But I'm going to tell you something. In my part at least, and I can't speak for anyone else on this, I went and joined the military. A key reason was to help other people, those that needed help. My training in my family, my education with my family, my education at St. Raymond's Grade School was all about giving to others and helping others that couldn't help themselves. I was taught that from the moment I was born, I think. So when I went to Vietnam, I questioned initially in my mind why we were there. But then the more we were there, the more the reality came to me. And when we left Vietnam, everybody forgets what happened in a neighboring country. Now 9 million people within 2 years were slaughtered. That's 9 million people within 2 years. And they didn't have to worry about the United States military being next door to them to do that. So these are things that I remember that are personal to me. There are reasons why I believe we were doing a good job. It's a shame politics got involved, and it's a shame everyone else got involved. One more thing here. I've had people over the years, a few people, brag about being draft dodgers at the time of Vietnam. I really don't like that, because every time we had a draft dodger, it did two things. It meant someone else was going to go in harm's way in his place. That was number one. And that person could die. Not that this person wouldn't have, but you just said, I want somebody else to do it for me. And the second thing, and this is in Robert McNamara's book, who was Secretary of Defense under Lyndon Johnson. The book is a great book on Vietnam called An Argument Without End. I would suggest almost everybody read that book and study it, because it tells you how we could have saved 50,000 lives. And I hold Robert McNamara and Lyndon Johnson responsible for those lives today. But the interesting thing to me was the fact that every time we had a protest, we were strengthening our enemy's determination. And they said that at that conference in 1995. It was our protesters here that gave them the will to continue fighting, knowing they could outlast us, because the United States of America didn't have the heart. We didn't have the heart then. And today, for looking at what we've got today, I feel that way. There was an interesting story, if I may, Mike, I'd like to share with you when I was a blue and gold officer for the Naval Academy. Again, that's a glorified title for a recruiter for the Naval Academy. I met a young man at a speech I gave, and he came up to me after it, and we talked for a bit. And he was really interested in going to the Naval Academy. He had all the credentials, grades, athlete, even worked at a part-time job. You couldn't want anything more. You just couldn't as a recruiter. But before I go further with him, I always want to talk to the parents. So I told him I'd give his parents a call the next evening if he would give them a heads up that I was going to make the call. He did. I made that call, and I heard this over and over a number of times. A woman gets on the phone, his mother, and says, forget it. You're not going to talk to my son about, and she used the pleaders here, about going into the military. He's too good for that. I got to tell you, every time I heard that, it turned my stomach. My friends and I that were in the military, and this is friends, people I met in the military, we were doing it without giving it a second thought, frequently for everybody else. And to hear people say to me, oh, my child's not going in because he's too good for that, or for another reason, oh, he's got his career set out. It used to churn me. It used to turn my stomach. Because a lot of vets, when we get together, we totally believe that everybody that's running for public office should have given this country 2 years, whether it was in the military or working as a volunteer in a hospital, should have done something for other people to prove they cared about other people.
Maybe we can get back to the book a little bit and talk about where is it available? Where can people find your book?
Oh, thank you. I was waiting for that one. You can find it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, etc. It's print on demand, like most books are today. It's available in Kindle. This month it's running for $2.99. Kindle runs these specials that they don't tell authors about sometimes as well, where you can get them for free. So the bottom line is it's available in Kindle for $2.99. It's available again in copy, in hard print. So if you go on Amazon, and 30,000 outlets actually, it's available. My next book, which I'm hoping is out in January, is going to be a different concept totally, but I think people are really going to like it. It's a book that used to be of tremendous value. People still hang on to these ideas. It's called This is the Season for the End of Times. It's an old idea, but I'm going to tell you right now, none of the other ideas and reasons for the end of times are found in this book. It is completely unique. It doesn't base itself on our culture. It doesn't base itself on a world war. It doesn't base itself on the prophecies from Jewish scripture or from the Catholic Bible. It is strictly a new concept with a lot of weight and evidence. But that's my feeling and it's my opinion. And I'm even going to, in the book, in the final chapter, tell you what I see. So I hope to bring it all together by that point, but I'm anxious to get that one out. So,
well, the book is They Went in Harm's Way. As I've already told you, I enjoyed it immensely. It's a nice, easy read. I want to tell you that I read it in my office, but I would say that maybe the bathroom is not a bad spot for it, and you can go through one of your stories in about 10 or 15 minutes. The people like Bruce Archer, the Hesters, the father and son. I mean, these are stories that really affected me when I read them.
We also had stories on four people from Bucks County. Charles Lucisano from Lucisano Brothers. Everybody looked at him.
Concrete guy.
Yeah, oh yeah, everybody respected Charlie. He sat on 32 boards of directors, really neat guy. Very few people realize he led the first low air bombing raid over Japan. He was the navigator for that raid. And they only had 7 planes. A couple of movies have been made indicating there were many more planes than 7. So Charlie's in there. Malin Horney, who joined the Marine Corps first week in January 42, wanted to go take care of the enemy. He was only 16 years old. A few months later, found himself at the Battle of Guadalcanal, first wave, and then 3 years later, Battle of Iwo Jima, first wave again, Marine Corps. Another person from Bucks, of course, I mentioned Rich Freed, my friend. Rich was served with the Marine Corps. He was my surprise because I knew him for almost 30-some years. Never knew he served Marines till one day we're talking next to his car and I see the familiar USMC Marine sticker. And of course, all the Marines know that USMC means United States Misguided Children. I got to get that one in.
Yeah.
And then there was Brigadier General of the Marine Corps, Dave Hines, who lived in Bucks County for a while. 2-star Marine General who flew the F-14, F-18. And actually for 2 months before he ran into an argument with its construction over its construction with some guy named, Obama's Gates, as he put him. It's an interesting story. But they all are from Bucks County too. So and I have people from Texas, Florida, etc. It's an interesting book because I view people, these vets, as our neighbors, as our friends, and we should at least address them that way and ask them something about their military service.
Yes, I'm going to make sure that I remember that in the future. And Richard was interesting. There were so many little interesting things in the book. One of the things is that your characters turned up at other times in your life when you met other people. Bruce Archer and how he showed up later on, and we didn't even talk about the fact that he was shot down, reported killed in action, and then 5 years later he was released as a POW. So I mean, there's a lot of really poignant stories in this book.
I thank you.
Yeah, I thank you, and I thank you for being one of those guys that stood on that wall for us. We'll make sure to let everybody know where to get the book, and we'll get that out. And hopefully I'll get a chance to sit down with you again because I really enjoyed talking to you, Sam. You're a good man.
Well, thank you, Mike. Enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. All right, that's Sam Augustine, the author of They Went in Harm's Way, a great little book available on Amazon, etc., and we'll have it all on the website. Thanks again, Sam.
Thank you, Mike.
You're listening to Fat Hat Radio.